Welcome back. It's time for us to take a look at another of the hands-on demonstrations that we were doing in class, and we've chosen to include a video asset for this one that involves using the AHP as a recruitment or interview rubric because it may not be possible to see what's happening in class or discern what's happening in class when you listen to the recorded audio of the instructor working through the problem. And of course, you also can't see the diagrams that different students and groups are coming up with. So we're going to try it for ourselves, and we're going to imagine that we're trying to perhaps do a little bit of recruitment. In order to use AHP to do this, the exercise asks you to personally try to identify some kind of person that you need to hire. I'm going to select a project manager. I'm going to say that we need to hire a project manager. So I'm just going to make note of that here, just as an example, because I just want to show you how to work through the process of putting together an AHP again, and the way you might use something like this as a hiring rubric. Knowing that we're dealing with a project manager, what we wanted you to do with your team is to try to talk through the problem of what sorts of qualities and skills would you look for. For example, you might start out by saying, I want someone who has a project management certification. That's a requirement. So a PMP cert. But that's just an HR qualification. What other kinds of things would you like to see? Well, I might recognize that I'm going to be using this person in information technology and security, so I'd really like to see that they have some measure of security experience. And we're going to, later on, worry about breaking these down, so I'm just starting out with high level right now. Other things I would need? Well, I'd really like someone who is able to communicate very well. I need someone who is personable. And knowing a little bit about myself, I'm not sure if you heard the recording of me taking the class or you took the class with me, but one of the things that I would tell you if you did is that I have recognized about myself, and had pointed out to me by my wife, of course, your wife or your husband is often good at this, that one of the things I'm bad at doing is estimating the amount of time something will take. So knowing that's a weakness I have, I need someone who is really good at time estimates. That's got to be something that really is a skill for them, something they can do well. Now with that in line, of course we can break this down more. I'm going to begin to put together my AHP. So up at the top of this, I will simply say that we have hired somebody. So I will say hired, and that of course we know is the 1.0 full success solution. And then beneath that, let's start breaking down these top level requirements. So instead of saying PMP certification, why don't I say that certifications matter? So I'll say certifications. And I'm not going to put any numbers in these boxes yet, because I'm going to sort of skip a step along the way. I don't want to have to erase a lot of stuff and redo things. If I did this as a diagram on a computer, it'd be much easier. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. I also, let's see, so that's going to take care of PMP certification, and there may be other things there. Security experience. So in another box, I'm just going to put the word experience. And we'll break down further what kind of experience we'd be interested in. Next, I've got maybe personal skills. So I'll say skills, and I think for me, that's probably going to take in both the time estimate and being personable and communication. Let's start breaking this down. I might begin by saying all things are equal, so each of these represents 33% of hired. But are there some aspects of this that are more important to me than others? You know, I think there might be. I think that for us in our organization, we would say that certifications may weigh more heavily than experience, and that skills would likely also weigh more heavily than experience. Now, you might actually go the other way. You might say, well, certifications are nice, but if they've actually been able to bring projects to completion, that is much more important to me than any certifications they have. And their skills, well, part of how we demonstrate that is through experience. So maybe these two are weighted more. Let's go that route. Let's say that these two are worth more than that one. How much more? Well, I'm not exactly sure. We have 100% to work with, 100%, and we know that across this should be 100%. I have 100% to work with. Let's say that these two together represent 75%. Now actually, I think I'm going to make that a little easier on myself. Let's say that these two together represent 80%. So I'm going to immediately go to the sort of breakdown here and say, well, these are each going to be 0.40, which means that there's only 0.2 left over here. All right, so certifications, we've said they're good, but they're worth less for us. What do we mean by certifications? Well, I'm going to add some boxes for those. Let's say that we have a PMP, and perhaps there's they've taken us the SANS project management, which I don't remember what they have for that, but let's just call it SANS project management. That would be nice, and maybe they've got some maybe some Six Sigma stuff. So I'll just put Six Sigma, which would be excellent. And I'm going to say that of those, the PMP is good, but that's sort of a basic requirement. The SANS project management, that's good. That's got a lot more practical stuff in it. And the Six Sigma, that might even be better. Well, if that's the best, let me say that a Six Sigma, that would be worth, say, a 0.5 of the 0.20, so 50% of that. Now, I'm not going to fix that just now. I'm saying that in this region, that's worth 0.5. I'm going to say that the SANS project management would be 0.30 for me, and the PMP, that's going to be a 0.20. So these do add up to 100%. That's what I'd expect. But I can also break these down differently. Remember, I could also look at these as globals. That just changes when we do the mathematics on this. Maybe I'll leave them for now. How about experience? Well, let's say that it's actual PM experience, and the other is more on the, let's say, I'll put it APM, assisting with projects, assisting projects to completion. And of course, I've drawn my boxes too small, so I can't actually fit the numbers in there, so let me just erase that. All right, so let's say that project management, if they've done that, that's worth a 0.75, 0.75, 75%. If they've only assisted, that's 0.25. Now, I might also look at this and say, you know, I'm being needlessly detailed, because couldn't I just take in this if it's actual project management or assisting in project management or working on a team? Couldn't I say that I could just incorporate that into how I rate them, how I score them? Absolutely. In fact, let's do that. I'll get rid of these boxes completely. Moving over to the skills. There's a couple of skills we said were really key. They need to be able to communicate well. And that's something we'll, I suppose, assess while we're interviewing them. So communication really matters. We said that a couple of other things. So time management. And we may have to work on how we assess that, maybe what questions we ask to do that. We also said, well, personable. I think what we're looking for there, what we're trying to say is they fit in. So they're a good fit for our enterprise, for our team. So let me just put those three boxes. And I'm going to say that of those, I think that probably communication is going to be really important. I'm not sure if time is less important, though. Those two really matter. I need someone who's going to hold us to good time estimates and teach us, start to develop us, and develop in us our skills toward time management. So I think these two together are probably equal, but they're also more important than fitting in. Because if the person isn't, an amazing fit, but they've got these two skills, that's really going to matter. All right, so why don't we say that these two together are going to represent, again, maybe 80%. So I'll give this a 0.40 and a 0.40. And I'll say fitting in, that's important, but it's only 20% of that problem. I'm just going to draw some lines so that we can kind of keep in our head where these things break down. Now, we remember that you can break these down further, though we didn't do it in the slides that we had previously. I'm going to include it here because we've made this one very simple, just to show you what that would be like. Let me take, for instance, communication. And let me say that there are two ways I care about that. One is verbal, and the other is written. Those are the two ways I really care about this person communicating. And I'm going to say that those things, they're worth, let's say, 0.5 each. All right, so we've got sub-criteria. This now gives us things that we can put on a rubric. We're looking for just some check-the-box kinds of things. Do they have certs? So I'll put here, kind of building out a rubric, certs, and we'll say PMP, SANS, Six Sigma. Next, I've got experience, and that's going to be simply a rating. Finally, I've got skills, but under skills, under that subheading, I've got a lot of other things happening. So I'd want to know about how they fit. I want to know about verbal and written skills. Written skills. And let's see, time management and the ability to teach us or help us do time management better. All right, so if we have those now, and we build that as a simple rubric for us, ourselves, maybe as a spreadsheet, we can just begin to fill in some values. So if we're now talking to somebody, let's say we're speaking to this gentleman over here, he comes in, he says, yes, indeed, I do have the PMP, I also have the SANS, and you know what, to be consistent here, I'm going to rate everything on a scale of 1 to 10. So for these, if he has it, that's worth 10. The SANS, he has never had that. That's going to be a, I said 1 to 10. I could put a 0 in there too. There's nothing, so 0. Six Sigma, he's done some training. He's got some experience. He worked a place where they did Six Sigma for quality and development, but he hasn't got any certs. All right, so in our discussion, maybe I come to the conclusion that that's worth maybe about 6. That's where he scores. How about experience? Well, he's actually been doing project management. He's worked on some different projects. He's worked as a team member. He's helped project managers, but he's also acted as a project manager over 3 different projects in the last 3 years. That's not amazing experience, but it's decent. It's certainly more than none. Perhaps when I think about his experience, and perhaps as I compare him with other candidates, I feel his experience comes in at about a 7. That takes us down to skills. From me speaking to him and other team members speaking to him as we're discussing different candidates and meeting them, he comes in at maybe a 4. So he's maybe not the most liked. He's maybe doesn't smile quite the way we like, or doesn't dress the way we like exactly, but we might be able to work with him. All right, we don't like him a lot, but we find that he's actually pretty well spoken. We give him a 9 on that. And he provides some writing samples for us, and when we read them, we find that they are actually excellent writing examples. He is very, very skilled at that. Based on answers to whatever questions we've arrived at for ways to determine time management, perhaps that's looking at past experience and calling people who have worked with him and them saying things like, oh yes, if he says it'll be done here, it'll be done here. We feel he's maybe about an 8 over here. At this point, we can begin to do some math. Now, I may get some of the math wrong. I'm going to cheat a little bit and just pop open a calculator here so that we can get everything correct. All right, so let's see what we get. Some of these are pretty easy. So he has the PMP. So the PMP is worth 10. 10 times 0.2, that's going to bring us down to, well, let's just do the math. 10 times 0.2, that's worth 2. So there's a 2 in this box. We've got the SANS project management. He had a 0 there. We've got in this box a 6 times a 0.5. That will be a 3. In experience, he had a 7. So the 7 times 0.4, that works out to be a 2.8. Fitting in, we've got a 0.2 of 4. So again, let's just do the math so I don't get it wrong. That's going to be a 0.8. Communication. His communication in terms of verbal was a 9. So 9 times 0.5 times 0.5 is going to be a 4.5. Written was half of 10. So we got a 5 on that. And time, we said 8. So 0.4 times 8. Oops, 0.4 times 8. 3.2. Now we begin to add up and do some additional math. We, for instance, can take these three values here and sum them. So we have 0.2 plus one more time, 0.2 plus 0.3. No, sorry. 2 plus 0 plus 3. That's what we have. And this total then is 5. But when we bring it up here, it's 5 times 0.2. So 5 times 0.2, that's going to be a 1. He's got a 1 in certifications. Over here, under experience, we've got 0.4 times, we've got 2.8. So we just have 2.8. We've got that number. I'm just going to move this 1 up here so that they're in consistent locations. Under skills, now this is broken down a little bit more. I'm going to start at the bottom part of the tree because when I add these all up, I need this number to be complete. So we have a 4.5 plus a 5, that's 9.5, times 0.4. So 0.4 times 9.5, that's going to give us 3.8. That means our total across there is 0.8 plus 3.8 plus 3.2, that's 7. 7 times the 0.4. We have a 2.8. And if we add those all up, we now have 2.8. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my fingers. 2.8 plus 2.8 plus 1. So his overall score is a 6.6. We'll say 6.6. I'm not going to work through this again for each of the candidates, but I hope you can see that as we rate the candidates using this rubric, simply assigning a number from, I guess, 0 through 10 or 1 through 10, we begin to form a picture of a score, a relative score based on all of these weighted factors. Sorry about that. Based on all of these weighted factors that we have here, and can assign that value to this person. Perhaps when we do this, we find that this person here, she scores a 6.4. This person here scores a 5.1. This person here scores a 6.9. And this person here, who perhaps we like the least, ends up scoring a 7.1. Well, that might mean that the person who we like the least, which frankly is often the way we react in hiring unless we have real established criteria, might actually be the most important or best fit for the job. Now, I want to remind you that in our discussion of AHP, we did point out that AHP is just a tool. So we're not saying for sure that this is the guy you ought to hire. If you're looking at this person and saying, well, I don't believe what the rubric is telling me because there's things about him that I saw that are red flags, we just can't use him. If that's the case, do not simply reject the whole process, and don't simply reject him out of hand. Instead, what that's telling you is that perhaps your weightings here are not correct, or perhaps some of these need to be broken down further, and then re-rate all of your candidates. Now, I'm not saying this to say that if you have a candidate that you really love and you just find him personable, you can just massage the numbers to make him the person who makes the best score. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when the tool is telling you that you're selecting the wrong person and you're convinced that you are right, this at least gives you a way to see why it is the tool is telling you that and to perhaps more accurately gauge your own subjective observations. So to recategorize the different weightings that we have here in the tool. We hope you find that useful. If you do have questions about it, or maybe you're trying to put together one for yourself for the very first time and you'd like some feedback on it, please feel free to reach out. We'll help you in any way that we can.